All right, everybody, welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. In this episode, we will be covering the Sunday afternoon games, the Sunday night, as well as the two Monday night games that took place at the exact same time. To kick it off was a pretty interesting game, to say the least, which was the Seahawks traveling to Santa Clara, not San Francisco, to take on the 49ers and lose 28-16. I will give credit to Drew Lock. He did play a lot better than I expected him to. Honestly, was not a terrible game for him by any means. He was 22 of 31 for 269 yards, threw 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, rushed it 3 times for 5 yards, 17.26 fantasy points. Again, not a guy we were looking to start, but for the receivers, 269 yards and 2 touchdowns is not bad.
Yeah, like you said, far better than we thought.
Absolutely. And the running backs didn't fare so well in this one. Specifically, I guess for Ken Walker on the ground, he was 8 rushes for 21 yards. He had 5 targets out the backfield, caught 4 of them for 33 yards, 9.4 fantasy points. He's been nursing an injury. He only played 56% of the snaps, so it was pretty shared. But if you did start Ken Walker, was not a great week by any means, not absolutely terrible, but we would hope for more if we're putting him in the starting lineup. Charbonnet was a lot more efficient running the ball. He carried it 9 times compared to Walker's 8 for 44 yards, but only had 1 target out the backfield, which he caught for 4 yards, so he finished 5.8 fantasy points. Just not a good week for Seahawk running backs.
Not expecting anyone to do too well against that Niners defense anyways, so.
That's very true. DK Metcalf started the game off very, very good. He had 2 catches and 52 yards for that touchdown very early in the game, which gave him 13.2 fantasy points. He was targeted 5 times before being ejected in the fourth quarter for getting into it with Fred Warner. And watching it back, I mean, I get it. Like, because we saw it was a college game. It was like Michigan State versus someone, and a lineman's on the ground, and another lineman comes up behind him and just barrels him in the back of the neck. And essentially, Fred Warner was attempting to do the same thing. So the retaliation was understandable, but fantasy-wise, it does not matter if it was justified or not. It did hurt seeing him ejected in the fourth, but 13.2 is a solid week for DK. Tyler Lockett actually led the receivers in fantasy points and yards and catches. He was targeted 6 times, caught all 6 for 89 yards, 14.9 if you did throw Tyler Lockett in the lineup. Was a very solid week, especially because he was probably playing your flex. That's a very good week. And Smith and Najigba saw the targets. He saw 7, but only caught 4 for 25 yards, 6.5. Again, as the season gets later on, we don't take crazy risks, and starting him is just not in the realm of possibilities right now. Noah Fant finished with 5.5, and Colby Parkinson had 2 catches for 28 yards and a touchdown, so he got 10.8. Not starting either of them. The Niners side of the ball. All of our guys showed up. Brock Purdy, 19 of 27, 368 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick, 2 carries for 7 yards, 22.4. Very solid fantasy week for him. Christian McCaffrey was incredible on the ground. Carried it 16 times for 145 yards. His first game seeing less than 3 targets. He only saw 1 target, which he caught for 8 yards, 16.3. If he got 4 or 5 targets in this game, it was another easy 20-point week, but 16.3 from McCaffrey is a solid week. And again, Eli Mitchell did not play, so it was Jordan Mason. He carried it 4 times for 20 yards and sniped a touchdown from McCaffrey. That is what we hate to see. And he also had a target out the backfield, which he caught for 6 yards, 9.6. He only played 11% of snaps. Even more frustrating that he got a touchdown.
Yeah.
Ayuk had another solid game. 9 targets, caught 6 for 126 yards. 16.6 because he did lose a fumble. Kittle saw 5 targets, caught 3 of them for 76 yards and a touchdown. 16.6. And Debo, yet again, a multi-touchdown game. He saw 9 targets, caught 7 of them for 149 yards and a touchdown. Carried the ball once for a yard, another touchdown. 34 fantasy points even. It's easy with the
really
Niners.
At
Oh,
perfect time of the year.
he's going crazy. And in one of the Yahoo leagues we play in, super early in the season when CeeDee Lamb was struggling, I traded CeeDee Lamb for Debo and Devon Achane, and it was looking terrible. I mean, honestly, looking back, I still wish I didn't do it. But it was looking bad for a while when Achane got hurt and Debo was banged up, not doing too well. But Debo has gone nuclear the past 3 weeks. So
Yes.
he's made up for it a bit. But that's it from this one. It's fairly simple. All of your Niners you start every single week, no matter what.
Yeah. On to the next one, which we saw the biggest crybaby display of the year by Patrick Mahomes
Oh my
post game
gosh.
and in the press conference. It turns out that even the Chiefs sometimes are on what they feel is the wrong side of refereeing, even though it was a completely correct call. He was lined up off sides, therefore the ensuing play doesn't matter if it was one of the greatest plays in NFL history or an interception, regardless of what happened, it wouldn't have counted anyways. So all the whining is just ridiculous. But the Bills went into Kansas City and
Yeah.
handed the Chiefs their second loss in a row, winning 20-17.
Yeah.
Josh Allen with another solid quarterback performance, 20 for 30, 23 for 42, 233 yards and a touchdown, also an interception. Go figure.
Yeah.
10 attempts on the ground for 32 yards and another touchdown, giving him 21.5 points. Pretty good. James Cook played 44% of the snaps, but was very good in his time on the field. Had 10 attempts for 58 yards, but also caught all 5 of his targets for 83 yards and a touchdown, giving him 25.1 points. One of the best games we've seen out of James Cook, and he is coming to life like Debo at the perfect time of the year.
Yeah.
So James Cook's looking good. Another tough matchup this week against the Cowboys, but the usage he's been getting, you know, kind of kicking the tires on him again.
Yeah.
Latavius Murray had limited involvement in this one, 3 attempts for 9 yards, also caught a pass for 21 yards, which he proceeded to fumble, which luckily for the Bills went out of bounds because nobody could seem to get on top of the ball. But
Yeah.
he got 4 points in this one. Ty Johnson played 21% of the snaps, had 5 attempts for 19 yards, caught both of his passes for 2 yards, giving him 4.1 points. The most they are is annoyances when they eat into James Cook's workload, but thankfully James Cook has been good enough to get it done whenever he is on the field for the most part.
Yeah.
Dalton Kincaid had a fairly disappointing outing in this one. He played 78% of the snaps, 60 snaps, which was 2 more than last week, even in the return of Dawson Knox, because we know this team likes to run a 2 tight end set most of the time. It did take away from the targets that Kincaid would probably get with Knox being back out there, just because Knox is kind of the old reliable when Josh Allen needs to, I don't know if you saw the play where he stood, I don't remember which defender it was on the Chiefs, stood him up and kind of threw his sidearm to Dawson Knox. Dawson
Mm-hmm.
Knox kind of just there when he needs to make a play.
Yeah.
So Kincaid finished with 5 catches on 8 targets for only 21 yards, giving him 7.1 points. Knox got 3 targets, caught them all for 36 yards, giving him 6.6 points. Probably the most disappointing outing was Stephon Diggs, because he got 11 targets, but only caught 4 of them for 24 yards, 6.4 points. And really tough going up against not tougher matchup, but just as difficult
Yeah.
this coming week.
Yeah.
You still got to start Stephon Diggs. That's not a question, but the guy that we talked about, obviously you could not trust going into the most important week of the year, regardless of his performance last week. It's okay if you did that on your bench because he's also going to do this on your bench. 82% of the snaps, 2 targets, did not catch one of them. Of course, we're talking about Gabe Davis. It's either a goose egg or a 15-plus point performance out of him.
Yes.
Nothing in between. And it was a goose egg today. So hopefully you did not start him or trust him to help get you to the playoffs or secure your spot. Because if you did, you got burnt. Khalil Shakir, 1 catch on 1 target for 12 yards, 2.2 points. Nothing too spectacular out of really anybody else outside of James Cook and Josh Allen in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Mahomes, another mediocre performance.
Yeah.
25 for 43, 271 yards, 1 touchdown, and an interception. Had 1 attempt for 8 yards, only 14.6 fantasy points. I saw a tweet today that Sam Howell has more fantasy points this year than Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes 1 is the QB8 on the season. By far his lowest since his rookie year. He's only broken 20 fantasy points 1 time in the past 6 games. If they don't get a major weapon there, even if Travis Kelce comes back again next year, I don't know where I'm taking Mahomes in drafts.
Well, definitely not as high as we
No.
would have in previous years. I mean, it's just coming down to earth.
Yeah.
Also, I think it really hurt the offense that Isaiah Pacheco wasn't out there because neither Clyde Edwards-Helaire nor Jerick McKinnon can run the ball quite the same degree of efficiency.
Yeah.
CEH had 11 attempts for 39 yards, caught 2 of his 4 targets for 29 yards, giving him 8.8 points. Jerick McKinnon fared a little better due to the fact that he scored a touchdown, but only had 4 attempts for 19 yards, scoring that touchdown, and caught all 3 of his targets for 18 yards, giving him 12.7 points. Had Edwards-Helaire played 48% of the snaps, and McKinnon played 45. So hopefully you looked elsewhere for running back help in this one, but if you happen to go McKinnon, he did not burn you.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce, not his best week, but not his worst one by any means. Played 89% of the snaps, caught 6 of his 9 targets for 83 yards, giving him 14.3 points. We'll take that.
Yeah.
And, I think the days of Travis Kelce being the solidified every week tight end 1
are over. They are.
come to an end.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, he is still a top option by no doubt in the matter.
Yeah.
Noah Gray didn't do anything. Rashee Rice finally got his due workload, played 85% of the snaps and got 10 targets, which he caught 7 of for 72 yards and a touchdown. Good things happen when you use Rashee Rice. He got 18.2 points. There we go. Justin Watson played 55% of the snaps, caught 1 of his 2 targets for 18 yards. 2.8. Sky Moore didn't catch his lone target. And Kadarius Toney. Oh, man. Well, he caught 3 of his 4 targets for 25 yards, had 2 rushing attempts for 16 yards for 7.1 points. Had he not lined up off sides, he would have also had... I don't know exactly how that would have worked. I think they're on like the 15, so maybe I think he threw back like 2 yards, maybe like a 17-yard touchdown catch.
Mm-hmm.
So that got nullified, but rightfully so.
Yeah.
You don't, line up as you should. So there's a video that he checked, but he just looked and didn't even look for the ref's response. Just looked over and looked back.
He was also looking over as he was lining up. So as he's going up, he's looking to the side, and it's that's why
farther forward.
That's why you're lining up off sides. You didn't line up and then be like, oh.
No, he looks as he's lining up and moving forward as it's just it was bad by Kadarius Toney.
Yeah.
It was a bad look by Patrick Mahomes to complain after the game the way he did to Josh Allen, and then the whole rant he went. It's a bad look for the Kansas City Chiefs as a whole. Hopefully they continue to crumble. But as far as fantasy goes, Rashi Rice is looking good as an every week start,
Yeah.
as obviously is Travis Kelce. When Isaiah Pacheco plays, we play him. Patrick Mahomes, I mean,
It's mm-hmm.
it's tough right now.
Yeah.
They play the Patriots this week, I believe. I think you play Mahomes, but
Yeah.
it's a lot rougher than we would hope going into, like I said multiple times, the most important stretch of the fantasy season. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'll take us to not only the ugliest game of the week, possibly the ugliest game of the year. The Vikings at the Raiders. Vikings won 3-0. This was the worst case scenario for just about every single person that we would play in fantasy. It was horrible. This game was one of the worst games. No, this game is the worst game I've ever seen played. It almost broke history by being the first game ever to go to overtime as 0-0. Josh Dobbs was 10 of 23 for 63 yards, carried the ball 5 times for 21 yards for 4.62 fantasy points before being benched after playing 74% of snaps for Nick Mullins, who was far more efficient through the air. He was 9 of 13 for 83 yards, 3.3 fantasy points, whatever. We're not worried about them. It's a question going forward of if they're going to continue rolling Josh Dobbs or possibly look to Nick Mullins.
It's going to be Nick Mullins, I believe.
Which is crazy. Just my opinion. I think it's crazy to go to Nick Mullins, but I digress. That's a Vikings decision. Alexander Mattison was someone I liked this week, and he was having a very solid week. He carried the ball 10 times for 66 yards, giving him 6.6 before he hurt his ankle and did not return. He only played 32% of snaps. Ty Chandler then took over, got 12 carries for 35 yards, 3 targets out the backfield, and he caught all 3 for 7 yards and 7.2 fantasy points, playing 56% of snaps. Didn't consider starting Ty Chandler this week. The 2 receivers we considered starting, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. Jettas had 3 targets, caught 2 of them for 27 yards, 4.7. Only played 18% of snaps before he got absolutely lit up
Obliterated
by Marcus Epps and left the game with a chest injury that he was not able to return from. Jordan Addison played the whole game and was only targeted 3 times, caught 2 of them for 27 yards, 4.7. KJ.
Unfortunately, the last one was the one that put the Vikings in the field goal range.
Yeah, no, I mean, unfortunate, but it's that point of the season where I don't think you know what I mean? Like, it's, if the Raiders won this game, it's just for, not even playoffs, just a worse draft spot.
Wow, I guess. I don't even know.
Yeah. But fantasy-wise, and okay, KJ Osborne had 7 targets, caught 4 for 15 yards, 5.5. Hawkinson had an okay day for Hawkinson standards. He had 8 targets, caught 5 for 53, 10.3 fantasy points. So on the Vikings side of the ball, I really liked the Madison start. He gave us 6.6. Jettas is back, fire him up, gave us 4.7. Addison, fire him up, gave us 4.7. Hawkinson gave us 10.3. The game was 3-0. You know,
I mean, you're not going to get much out of a 3-0 game, so it is what it is. You know, we can't. You never think
this
you're going to
will
watch
happen.
A football game where both teams stay home.
I know someone that's a Vikings fan that flew there, paid for the hotel, paid for the ticket, all of that, and watched them win 3-0.
Were they happy?
No.
I mean,
he said quite literally, this is possibly the worst game in NFL history, and I had to go and
be there live. Yeah.
The only keepsake was, the Vikings won, but you don't pay over $1,000 to watch your team win 3-0. This isn't soccer. But whatever. The Raiders side of the ball was basically just as dull. Aiden O'Connell was 21 of 32, 171 yards, no touchdowns, an interception, one carry for 2 yards, 6.04 fantasy points. Josh Jacobs was 13 carries for 34 yards, caught both his targets for 16, giving him 7 fantasy points before injuring his quadriceps and not returning. He played 63% of snaps, so both starting running backs did exit this game. And then Amir Abdullah came in, gave us 3.9, and Zamir White got 0.8. Devontae Adams had a
I
solid
mean, I
game.
can't sit here and act like that just on a. What does Aiden O'Connell offer that Jimmy G doesn't?
Nothing. At this
I mean,
point,
I thought at
nothing.
least the younger guy might have more. He looks less mobile than Jimmy G.
He is.
For God's sakes. I mean, like, there's times in the pocket he just looks confused in there. It's like
Mm-hmm.
he, yeah, Jimmy was throwing some interceptions. So is O'Connell, and
Yeah.
O'Connell's decision making, he looks like that of a rookie. It just
It doesn't make sense at this point. It does not.
like I haven't seen, I haven't seen Jimmy G lose a game 3-0.
No, and this was one of those games where I'm like, can we just throw Jimmy in? We haven't scored a single point. It's late in the third at this point. Like, just see what
Like for the
happens.
fans, at least, for the love
Yeah.
of God.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
think
no.
it's hurt. I mean, not Devontae as much, but it's hurt Jacoby Myers astronomically not having Jimmy G out there, and it was just
I think the offense as a whole, it just can't
yeah,
move the ball.
no. And Devontae got 10 targets. He caught 7 of them for 53 yards, 12.3. So an okay week from Devontae, but again, he's a guy we drafted in like the second, early third round, very latest. So it's 12.3 is like literally okay.
Yeah.
Jacoby Myers saw 6 targets, caught 5 of them, 25 yards, 7.5. He's become a guy we can't start. We can't. He gets in the end zone every now and then, but it just since Jimmy has not been the starter, he has gone down. Renfro caught 3 catches for 46 yards, 5 targets. He lost a fumble, a very crucial fumble in this game. Finished 5.6, and Michael Mayer 2.4. It was just a bad week. I mean, you can guess how many points Daniel Carlson had. 0. Just like the score of the Raiders. It was just a terrible game.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, yeah. Not too much more to say on that one.
No.
But you guys play the Chargers this upcoming week, so that should be interesting to see. Speaking of the Chargers, they got waxed at home by the Denver Broncos. It didn't help them much that they unfortunately lost Justin Herbert in this one. For now, what we know is the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So it will be Easton Stick behind the wheel. But
Wow.
we will get to that in a second. First of all, is the Denver Broncos, where Russell Wilson went 21 for 33, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Had 6 rushing attempts for 5 yards, giving him 16.5 points. Javonte Williams had one of his better games to date, has been doing a lot better lately, and this is something we love to see. 17 attempts for 66 yards and a touchdown, also caught 3 of his 4 passes for 25 yards, 18.1 points. Great day out of Javonte.
Yeah.
Obviously a game, if you had him, you were starting him, and I feel pretty comfortable moving along with him. So
Yeah.
Javonte played, 60% of the snaps this week. So Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Michael Burton, the fullback, split the rest. 21% going to each of Perine and Burton, and 19% to McLaughlin. Samaje Perine, in his play, had 2 rushing attempts for 8 yards, but caught 5 targets, which was all he received for 36 yards, giving him 9.4 points. Jaleel McLaughlin had 5 rushing attempts for 25 yards, caught one of his 2 targets for 7 yards, giving him 4.2. Not really looking at McLaughlin.
No.
Samaje Perine is that of a backup emergency option if Javonte Williams were to not play.
Yeah.
But you should have better options than that at this point in the season. Adam Troutman. Always make the joke that we are never starting a Denver tight end. Well, he decided to score a touchdown today. 2 of his 3 targets were caught for 19 yards and a touchdown, giving him 9.9 points. Jerry Jeudy thought was a good start. Also thought he had a touchdown, but apparently he does not know how to get 2 feet down in the end zone. If he would have done that, he would have finished much better, and it would have looked a lot better starting him, but he didn't, and also dropped another pass that hit him right in the hands. So he finished 2 of 6 for 16 yards, whopping 3.6 points. Not really looking at Jerry Jeudy anymore. That was pretty disappointing and pretty much told me all I need to know.
Yeah.
Courtland Sutton is the guy. Another amazing touchdown. Another one-handed touchdown, as a matter of fact. He caught 3 of his 4 passes for 62 and that touchdown, giving him 15.2 points. Courtland Sutton has been great, will continue to be, and yeah, we're moving right along with him. As a matter of fact, this week, Jerry Jeudy and Lil Jordan Humphrey played the same amount of snaps, so that's great.
Lil Jordan. I just did.
It's an amazing name. Marvin Mims caught 2 of his 3 passes for 11 yards, giving him 3.1 points, and he played 37% of the snaps. On to the much chagrined Chargers side of the ball.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert, before going out of this game with, I saw was a broken finger, which I guess he's getting surgery on, which will keep him out for the rest of the year due to the fact that the Chargers are pretty much out of playoff contention. This move makes sense.
Yeah.
But he was 9 for 17 for 96 yards and a pick before exiting this game. 2.8 points. Pretty awful. Easton Stick replaced him and was 13 for 24 for 179 yards for 5.2 points. I mean, he had a nice pass to Quentin Johnston, which he actually managed to catch this time. But outside of that, I mean, it's looking kind of rough for the Chargers offense. I think maybe it boosts Austin Eckler. I think he might actually catch more passes now due to the fact that Easton Stick is probably not going to have too much of an option.
It's going to hurt Keenan like crazy, I feel like.
Yeah,
that sucks, man. That really sucks.
Yeah, his target volume should still be there, but they're Easton Stick targets compared to Justin Herbert targets.
Yeah, that's just a tough one to hit with playoffs or either the very last week before playoffs. It's tough.
Yeah. So Austin Eckler was actually pretty efficient. Had 10 attempts for 51 yards and a touchdown. Also caught 5 of his 7 targets for 49 yards, 21-point day. We said you got to keep rolling Eckler, and if you did, you were rewarded in this one. Josh Kelly did not do anything, got 3 attempts for 6 yards. Gerald Everett caught 5 of his 8 targets for 39 yards, giving him 8.9 points. Might be a decent tight end option. We know how when backup quarterbacks step in, the tight end and the running back then become much larger parts of the pie as far as target volume goes. Donald Parham caught 1 of his 2 targets for 11 yards, giving him 2.1 points. Keenan Allen, I mean, got 12 targets, but only caught 6 of them for 68 yards, 12.8 points. Not the worst day, not the best. But as we talked about, this is now Easton Stick, not Justin Herbert. Quentin Johnston was actually the lead receiver in this one, caught 3 of his 4 passes for 91 yards because he caught that bomb from Easton Stick. I mean, dude's capable of passing far. We'll see how consistent he is.
Yeah.
Go up against the Raiders this week, and the Raiders actually have a pretty decent pass defense. So,
yeah.
12.1 points for Johnston. Nothing for Darius Davis. Funny enough, so Jalen Guyton got 1 target, caught it for 8 yards, 1.8 points. Alex Erickson got 7 targets. Caught 1 of them for 9 yards, but never mind. So we move on from that one.
Yeah.
And
right
into the Eagles-Cowboys game.
Yeah, our Sunday night game, the Eagles at the Cowboys, and the Cowboys got their get back, to say the very least. They dominated 33-13, and It was another team like the Eagles' fantasy offense outside of AJ Brown just did not. I guess Devontae Smith was okay, but started off. Jalen Hurts had by far his worst fantasy season, worst fantasy week of the season. His only single
Yeah.
digit performance. It was atrocious to say it the nicest way. He was 18 of 27 for 197 yards, no touchdowns passed, 5 rushes for 30 yards. 8.88. That hurts so bad in the most important week of the fantasy season so far. That's what Jalen Hurts gives you. It's just things we cannot foresee. But again, no matter what, you are starting Jalen Hurts every single week. Someone I'm starting to get a little bit worried about is DeAndre Swift. He finished this one with 11 carries for 39 yards. That's it. So he finished 3.9 fantasy points. That's single digits the past 3 weeks, albeit it was against the Bills, the Niners, and the Cowboys. They will be playing the Seahawks next week, so he should be able to bounce back. But just another brutal week. And he only played 51% of snaps. Kenneth Gainwell was out there 45% of snaps. Only ran the ball 4 times for 28 yards, 2.8. It just. There was. In the receiving game, Zacchaeus caught a single catch for 28 yards on 1 target. Dallas Goedert played 84% of snaps. I could not believe that he played in this game, and on top of that was out there basically the entire game. That's just beyond impressive. Good for him, but he only saw 4 targets, which he caught all 4 for 30 yards, finished 7 fantasy points. If you did happen to start him, I liked keeping him on the bench one more week. It wasn't a horrible week, but by no means was it a good week either. Devonta Smith was targeted 10 times, but only caught 5 for 73 yards, 10.3 because he lost a fumble. And so did AJ Brown, who had a good fantasy week though. 13 targets, caught 9 for 94 yards, finished 16.4 because Stephon Gilmore made a Hall of Fame play.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, and we knew the Cowboys defense was capable, but we also saw how the first game went down. We saw how the Eagles played last week. I thought they were going to show up into this one upset and ready for an absolute brawl, and they came out flat again. So, gosh, they went through that whole stretch, winning every game, and then they got to the end. And it makes sense, though. You only play so many extremely difficult opponents in a row and continue to perform like that. So,
No, yeah, I agree. But on to the Cowboys side of the ball, where Dak Prescott had one of his more middle of the pack performances fantasy wise.
yeah.
Real football wise, it was very good. I mean, he was 24 for 39, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 attempts for 11 yards. He lost a fumble, which Jalen Carter picked up in return for a touchdown, but he had 17.9 points. Tony Pollard in this one had 16 attempts for 59 yards, caught 7 of his 8 targets for 37 yards, giving him 16.6 points. Thank you, Tony Pollard. This is back to exactly what we need out of you.
Yeah.
Rico Dowdle, unfortunately, sniped a touchdown in this one. Had 12 carries for 46 yards, and that touchdown also caught 1 pass for 6 yards, giving him 12.2 points. You know, I'm sure Tony Pollard owners would have loved to see that touchdown go to Tony, but regardless, it is what it is. Both of them finished pretty decent days. Jake Ferguson, also with another decent day, caught 5 of his 8 targets for 72 yards, giving him 12.2 points. And CD Lamb caught 6 of his 10, 71, a touchdown, 19.1. Love to see it. Starting CD every week. Brandon Cooks, unfortunately, was a yard away from getting a 30-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
Was so close to getting another touchdown. I mean, he gets the end zone targets.
Mm-hmm.
This was a bad week for him, but I mean, hey, if you're rolling with him, I don't hate it. This was an off week, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Caught 2 of his 5 targets for 37 yards, 5.7 points. Could have been much better. It wasn't. Michael Gallup had a resurgence in this one. Caught 3 of his 5 targets for 48 yards and a touchdown, giving him 13.8 points. Jalen Tolbert and Keontae Turpin both were not able to haul in their lone targets. And Brandon Aubrey was the man of the hour.
Oh, yeah.
Kicked 4 field goals. One of them was 60 yards. One of them was 59. The other 2 were 50 plus, I believe. And he kicked 3 extra points, finishing with 23 points for a kicker. Absolutely incredible. Cowboys defense got 14 points. Everything was great.
Yeah, it was a fantastic week for them. To go to the Monday night games, and we do have 2 of them this week. The first one being the Packers at the Giants. The Giants were able to get the W, which was at least a surprise to me, 24-22. And this is another one where, I mean, really outside of one guy, this was just a disappointing fantasy week for the Packers. Jordan Love was 25 of 39, 218 yards, a touchdown and interception, 2 carries for 2 yards, 9.92. Just didn't get it done, flat out. And I left him in my lineup instead of Trevor Lawrence because I figured Trevor Lawrence is banged up even if he does play. And it's against the Browns, and he somehow does better than Jordan Love. And Jordan Love's been on a heater. So it just... fantasy football, man. It's...
He beat the Chiefs, but not the Giants.
Exactly. Aaron Jones did not play in this one, so we figured fire up A.J. Dillon. He's going to get all the volume. He only played 53% of the snaps. Rushed it 15 times for 53 yards, saw 3 targets, caught 2 of them for 25 yards, 9.8 fantasy points. And that's because they decided to play Patrick Taylor, 47% of the snaps. He was way less involved on those snaps. He only carried it 4 times, but for 30 yards. Caught both his targets for 22 yards, 7.2. Again, was not looking to start him. A.J. Dillon, I did like the start, and he came up a little bit short. The only guy who did not come up short was Jaden Reed, who was targeted 10 times and caught 8 of them for 27 yards. Only 27 yards on 8 catches. But it doesn't matter because, 1, that's already 10.7 fantasy points right there. You add in his 4 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown, you get 20.5. With no Christian Watson, he is by far the number 1. As Schiff mentioned, they use him more ways than one. Not only did he get the most targets on the team, he also got 4 rushing attempts. It's just, he is a very explosive player.
On the 2-point conversion at the end of the game.
Yeah.
They tried to run it in with him. They like getting the ball in his hands however they can.
Yeah. Romeo Doubs saw 7 targets, but only caught 4 of them for 32 yards, 7.2. He almost caught a touchdown, but did not get his other foot down. That would have changed his fantasy day completely had he caught that, but again, he did not. Malik Heath saw 2 targets, caught 1 of them for a 6-yard touchdown, 7.6 fantasy points. He only played 34% of snaps. When Christian Watson misses, the wide receiver 3 is Dontavion Wicks, who played 63% of snaps, saw 6 targets, but only caught 2 of them for 20 yards, so he got 4 fantasy points. And lastly, Tucker Kraft, 4 targets, caught all 4, 64 yards, 10.4. Again, not a guy I'm necessarily starting, but he has been decently productive without Musgrave there.
That is true.
His agent. Do you see his agent?
17 for 21, 158 yards and a touchdown. 10 rushing attempts for 71 yards. 17.4 points for Tommy DeVito. Giants won 3 in a row. He's rolling. Got to give it to him.
Yeah.
Good job, kid. He's doing well. Saquon Barkley. He showed up in this one. 20 attempts for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, lost a fumble, which would have had, 25 points, but whatever. But he caught 3 of his 4 targets for 15 yards, finishing with 23.1 points. Still a great day out of Saquon.
Yeah.
Matt Breida, great to see him getting nothing. 2 rush attempts for 16 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson also had a great day in this one. Caught 6 of his 7 targets for 79 yards. Also ran the ball twice for 36 yards, giving him 17.5 points. Over 100 yards from scrimmage. Wan'Dale is who we thought he would be last year, but
Yeah.
that's okay. Maybe next year.
Yeah. Not in the playoffs.
Maybe next
Not
year.
in the playoffs.
Darius Slayton finished with 2 catches on 2 targets for 14 yards, 3.4 points. Jalen Hyatt, 2 catches on 3 targets for 13 yards, 3.3 points. Sterling Shepard, nothing. Isaiah Hodgins, though, 2 catches on 2 targets for 22 yards and a touchdown, 10.2 points. Giants win 24-22. Go figure. Now, this next one is even more ridiculous than any of us could have imagined.
Yeah. The Titans beat the Dolphins 28-27, and the Dolphins were up 13 with...
No, the Dolphins were up. So I just want to give a little pretext to this for anybody who might not have watched this game. The score was 13-13, and the Dolphins punted. So I was like, okay, the Titans have a chance here. Titans muff the punt inside of their own 20. Dolphins score almost immediately. They kick off. On like the first play from scrimmage, they pitch it to Derrick Henry, a wild pitch, fumble, score almost immediately. So the score is 27-13 with 2 minutes and 59 seconds left in the game.
Mm-hmm. And the Titans win. It's unbelievable. It's just...
This is the Titans' first win on the road. The Dolphins' first loss at home.
Mm-hmm.
Dolphins are the number 1 seed if they win that game. It's just everything that goes into that game is so insane.
Yeah.
First rookie to ever pass for 300 yards on Monday Night Football. Like,
he's back.
First win by a team down 14 with under 3 minutes to go since 2016. Teams were previously 0-767. Like, you could just keep going down the list. There's no rhyme or reason why the Titans should have won this game. It's insane.
But the Titans did somehow manage to win this game. We only really look at 2 guys that we actually start every week on this team, and one of them is a bit more shaky than the other. But to start it off with Will Levis, he had a very solid game. He was 23 of 38, 327 yards, a touchdown, a pick, bad toss on the pitch. But he also had 4 carries for 15 yards, 17.58. Again, we don't look to start Will Levis, but seeing him have success through the air hopefully translates directly over to DeAndre Hopkins, which it did in this one. He saw 12 targets, caught 7 of them for 124 yards and a touchdown, 25.4 fantasy points. Love it. Huge week.
He was torching Xavier Howard. It was insane.
Yeah, and the other receivers, like Chris Moore got 3.2, Nick Westbrook-Akine got 6.8. Is what it is. Chigi Okonkwo had a decent day for a tight end. 5 catches for 46 yards, 9.6. The 2 outside of D-Hop, the 2 other stars of the show, were both running backs for the Titans. And Tyjae Spears outsnapped Derrick Henry yet again. Derrick Henry wasn't exactly efficient on the ground by any means. He carried it 17 times. How many carries did you need from him?
14.
Okay, so he got the over.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. 17 carries, but for only 34 yards, but got 2 touchdowns. Saw 2 targets out the backfield, caught one of them for 17 yards, 18.1 fantasy points. A very solid week for Derrick Henry, despite not really being efficient at all. He only played 48% of the snaps. Tyjae Spears played 66% of the snaps. And he was very explosive, especially through the air. He rushed the ball 7 times for 29 yards, but got 8 targets through the air, Caught 6 of them for 89 yards, 17.8 fantasy points. Again, we weren't really starting Tyjae Spears, but it's a name that Schiff especially has thrown around on this show as someone we like, and it's cool to see him have a good game. But
Yeah, he's definitely capable. Probably going to be their running back one next year. So things that should be paid attention to going into the offseason and into the next year.
yeah,
For the Miami Dolphins, a lot of disappointment.
yeah,
Well, unless you started Raheem Mostert. Tua was pretty terrible. It just didn't look good. Without Tyreek Hill out there, the Dolphins do not look like a good football team.
mm-hmm.
Tyreek was 23 for 33, 240 yards, had 3 rushing attempts for 15 yards, also lost a fumble, giving him 9.1 points. Raheem Mostert was 21 for 96, 21 attempts for 96 yards, 2 touchdowns, caught his lone target for 4 yards, 23 points from him. Devon Achane only ran the ball 7 times, but for 47 yards, found much more involvement as a pass catcher, receiving 9 targets, but only catching 5 of them for 24 yards, still giving him 12.1 points. Durham Smythe had a little bit of involvement in this one, caught 2 of his 3 targets for 16 yards. Tyreek Hill was injured in this game, came back, played some of it, but missed a large portion of it.
Yeah.
He caught 4 of his 5 targets for 61 yards. And to be 100% honest, without Tyreek on the field, the Miami Dolphins do not look that good. Yeah, Tyreek only played 47% of the snaps in this one.
Yeah.
So with him being out, Jalen Waddle played 82% of the snaps. Saw him get 6 catches on 8 targets for 79 yards, 13.9 points. You just don't see him dominate the way you'd like to with Tyreek not being out there. Cedric Wilson had some involvement, caught 2 of his 4 targets for 30 yards, giving him 5 points. Braxton Berrios also had a little bit of involvement, catching his 2 targets for 13 yards. Dolphins defense had 12 points because they got a pick 6. But for the most part, honestly, just in a I guess you could call it a must-win game for the Dolphins, was pretty awful.
Yeah.
It was a home game. And granted, they lost, I guess, 3 O-linemen near this, like in the beginning of this game. And their starting center is going to be out for the rest of the year, which is obviously huge because we saw what happens when pressure gets to Tua Tagovailoa. He cannot run.
No.
He fell multiple times. He fell during the goal line set, which forced them to have to kick a field goal. He fell on the 4th down, which effectively ended the game.
Yeah.
The only points they scored from this one were the pick 6. Granted, they marched down the field goal or down the field and got a couple field goals a few times, but the 2 touchdowns they got were from a muffed punt, which started them inside the Titans 20, and a muffed pitch, which started them inside the Titans 20. They weren't able to move the ball like we see the Miami Dolphins do, and this is against a very weak Titans pass defense. They didn't have Jeffrey Simmons tonight or that night. It's just very, this is a crucial time of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know what. It's confusing to see. They're going up against the Jets this next week, which makes the Tua Tagovailoa start in the first round of playoffs very difficult, especially with Tyreek. We know he's day-to-day as of right now, puts him very much up in the air as of this moment. My only 2 certain starts are Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert.
Yeah.
So that's all I have going in to the next week. That'll be all for the. Well, I mean,
yeah, it's very quick.
Yeah, it's not that we have some waiver. There's just a few guys that, if they're available, guys like Isaiah Likely, Matthew Stafford. If you need a streaming option this week, he's playing against Washington. Maybe if you're desperate, Russell Wilson against Minnesota, and maybe Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
But
It's
realistically,
playoffs. You shouldn't be.
Yeah. You really shouldn't need to be streaming anyone. There's no buys this week. Hopefully you're not dealing with too many injuries. It's looking like Jettis is going to be back.
Yeah.
We will get into the injuries and the health of all various players in our coming episodes. So stay tuned for that. But for now, this will be all. Thank you for tuning in. Like we say every week, we couldn't do this without any support from you guys. Like we always say, if you want to get in on the sleeper, just hit any of us up on any of our social media. You can
Hmm.
add us in the comments, whatever you prefer. And if you need any help or anything, we are always available for you guys. So come back next time. Take more reps with the first team.
Yes, sir.